In order to cut accounts payable checks from on target, vouchers must first be entered. To do so, go to Accounts Payable and click on the Vouchers desktop. Begin by adding the voucher. Voucher is synonymous with invoice. First, choose the vendor. Vendors are pre-configured and must be set up in the Vendors desktop. Then, provide a brief description. This is typically just a summary of the nature of the bill. The description field is also searchable in the General Ledger desktop, which could be helpful when doing historical reporting. Then provide the invoice date of the voucher, along with invoice amount. Invoice number is also required. In the event you do not have an invoice number on a statement, simply key a unique value. Discount type and amount are atypical in this industry. However, should you have any discounts to be applied at the time of cutting the check, enter in whether the discount type is an amount or percentage and the corresponding value. Schedule date is a critical field if you are not cutting the check at the time of data entry. If you are simply recording the invoice in the system in order for it to hit your books, a schedule date can be used to report upon when the checks need to be cut or what their actual due date is. The scheduled amount will populate from the invoice amount field. Should you want to pay a different amount at the time of cutting the check, enter in the partial value. Now that all required voucher information has been entered, click the Calculate button. If default distributions were set up at the time of vendor data entry, as in this case, the default distribution method will populate. Setting up the default distribution at the vendor level is highly recommended, as this saves you keying for consistent distribution methods every time the bill is being paid. Note that this can be edited as well. I can add the cost center at this time if I do not know what the default cost center would be. Likewise, I can add distribution methods as needed. Notice that this is red because I have not 100% allocated the total invoice amount. Now that my distribution total equals my invoice amount, I am able to continue with saving the voucher and further processing to the general ledger. Prior to doing so, it is important to note that the accounts payable invoices can be allocated all the way down to the service level, thereby allowing you to create a solid financial picture by service category. Likewise with client. Clicking Save will ensure that the data entered thus far is saved in the system. Save in Process would allow you to go ahead and post that voucher to the general ledger, a necessary step prior to creating the actual check. The Add Manual Check function allows you to document payments made outside of the system, typically checks coming from a handwritten checkbook. When clicking Add Manual Check, you will then choose your cash account, the posting date of the check, and then associating the actual reserved check number. Now we will move to reoccurring vouchers. Adding reoccurring vouchers is very useful if there is a consistent, regular payment that needs to be made to a vendor based on a routine basis. Begin by clicking Add Reoccurring Voucher. These steps are very similar to what we've already reviewed. Notice here that invoice number is not required, since each individual invoice from month to month may have a different invoice number. You can leave this blank when setting the reoccurrence pattern and then manually key at the time of individual check creation. Enter in the invoice amount along with any potential scheduled amount. Clicking Calculate will again bring forward any default distribution set up at the vendor's desktop. Add to it as needed. Now set the reoccurrence pattern. You may choose to create the vouchers weekly, monthly, quarterly, or annually. Likewise, you may choose the day of the week to pay the bills or the actual dates. If the bill is due the 5th of every month, simply choose the 5th. This window stays open if there are multiple days of the month to create the vouchers for. The system has now generated a voucher based on the reoccurrence schedule. This has saved it in the search grid, and it can later be edited as needed by clicking the Edit Voucher icon. Should you have any questions about adding vouchers or reoccurring vouchers, contact support by going to Options, Support, Contact Support.